Hello and welcome to our final episode of this season's Hometown Hauntings. Today we have a very special in-studio guest with us, one of our most famous guides in New Orleans. So today we welcome Uma to our podcast. Welcome, Uma.
Hello, Stephanie. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you. Our whole staff loves Uma. We love the way that she jumps in. We love her tours. We love her soothing voice, all of that. So we're excited to have you here.
I appreciate that.
So if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a guide with us.
I've lived here since 2007.
Where are you originally from?
I'm from Chicago, Illinois.
Oh, okay.
And I've been all over the place. I didn't move here from Chicago, but that is my hometown. And Chicago and New Orleans are like cousins. So we share the history of being on the Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And my great-grandfather, he also lived and worked here. And by the time Katrina had happened, he had passed. But he really loved the city so much. And so even though in 2004 I was living overseas, I was in Greece. I was working there, and I came back in 2005 because my mom was still in the States, and she fell ill. Consequently, I spent a month with her before she passed. And then Katrina happened 2 months later. So I was really, really distraught. And I was on the phone with everyone, trying to find out, what was going on. And then finally, when they opened New Orleans so that regular people could come in, I relocated here. But I think my reason for being a tour guide is because I don't think people really have a 360 view of New Orleans. Mm-hmm. They kind of just see it as a party town. Mm-hmm. And they know there's history here, but they don't really, I notice a lot of people when they listen to the stories, they don't really get a clear view of the people in the story or the circumstances around the people at the time, the historical time they were in, how that impacted the way they lived. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I try to bring to the party, not just the statistics and stuff, but really give them an understanding of who the people are. Mm-hmm. So because I love people, I love communication, I love languages, that all plays into giving people a more grounded view of what the city has to offer. Of course, yes, everyone loves to party, mm-hmm. But I think the takeaway I get from the 2 years I've been a tour guide is that they're curious about what motivated people to come here, and the way they lived and the things that they endured to make the city great now. So that's pretty much why.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm originally from Milwaukee, so it's similar to Chicago in that there's history there, but down here there's so much deeper history with so much symbolism and religious part of it and political part and all of that plays into New Orleans that I didn't have in Milwaukee at all. It's much more, it's just kind of more of a generic history there. But here there's so many layers of history.
Yes.
And I think a lot of it is due to the hurricanes, that every major hurricane seems to add a layer, but also strip away a layer at the same time.
Yeah. One of the things that one person asked me the other day was they were curious about how the cultures kind of interacted. And I was a little uncomfortable because it seemed as though they had a not accurate description. They would bring up Ellis Island and how the immigrants came through there. And it kind of was, it was like, well, did they have the same type of processing here? Mm-hmm. And so I was explaining to them, I said, first, I really don't understand why when they're talking about that particular part of time when immigration was very high, that the Port of New Orleans is never mentioned. Mm-hmm. And, it was here before Ellis Island. Mm-hmm. Many people's immigrant families came through the port. Mm-hmm. I think that's why a lot of people feel drawn here, because their ancestors did live here. And so I was trying to explain to them that interaction, and I think that's a big part that's missing. Yeah. Like the role that New Orleans played in the bigger picture of the country.
I also didn't know, I learned on a previous podcast that Galveston was much like Ellis Island and New Orleans as well.
Yes.
With the immigration.
Yes.
I had no idea. I thought Galveston was a party city. I mean, I really truly thought it was just a spring break destination.
Yeah.
And then I recently learned that there's so much more history similar to New Orleans, but also very impactful on the shaping of our country.
Yeah, well, there's a story that I'm still trying to fact check this story, but there's a story out that actually, France and Spain had that familiar connection. And so Spain actually could have founded New Orleans, but their navigator somehow missed the port and it ended up in Galveston. And so I'm still fact checking this.
Yeah.
I'm putting that out there again because we know we have our fact checkers watching. But I just find that very amusing how the French kind of gave Spain that kind of consolation thing of, all right, come on in the city and help us get things going, when it could have been the other way around.
How different would New Orleans have been without that French influence? I mean, it's just everywhere here. When we first moved down here, we were, I think, at a McDonald's. I don't even know where it was. Half the menu was in French. And I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And it took me a minute to realize it was French.
Yeah.
It's like, where did we move to?
Yeah. Well, I'm surprised that more people don't realize that we're still under French law here.
Right.
They come and you can see the culture shock. They're like, where are the police, Martha? You know? And it's like, no, that's the way we do things here. You know? So, yeah, it is a bit of a culture shock. I think people, it's just very a unique situation. This is why I'm fighting so hard to keep it above water. If this goes away, I can't imagine the country without New Orleans.
Yeah.
I really can't.
Yeah.
You know?
What is your favorite tour that you do in New Orleans? I know you're trained on so many.
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I would have to say it's the Bad Bitch Tour.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't think that the scope of the contribution that women made was really taken into consideration because we're looking from our vantage point. I keep telling people life in the 1800s was not for the timid, particularly if you were a woman. But we have people like Michela Alamanster-Patalba, who went through an absolutely nightmare of a marriage, but still managed to turn that into a victory for herself and her family name by building the Patalba apartments at a time when women were not being educated to do anything. And that's just remarkable. Every time I pass the apartments, I'm just really in awe. She's like my personal heroine because that's a landmark.
Yeah.
And for her to turn her life around and contribute that to the city, that's what makes that my favorite tour.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So is that your favorite stop then of all the tours as well?
Well, I think it's remarkable when you look at it from an architecture point of view. My background is design, okay? So I started off as a topographer and an ad agency, and I worked my way up, through public relations and event planning and everything. But I think the architecture keeps me here. It more than, the food and the music. I'm always looking at the architecture because it says something about the person. They're very elegant, first of all, and I think that elegance, no offense to anyone, but when I see architecture built by men, it's beautiful, but there's that elegance to the Patalba apartments that really show you that a woman was behind this.
Yeah.
And I think that's really remarkable. So, yeah.
There's such a difference in architecture between, I mean, just coming from the Midwest, it's such that middle European kind of style, a lot of heavy brick all over, very strong looking buildings. And then here it definitely has a more of a feminine touch to it. There's much more, like you said, the elegant details that play into it, and it makes it beautiful and gives it that French feel to everything.
Yes.
And it's just, it is, sometimes you feel like you're in another country.
Well, I think that's what makes this so wonderful and why we have to protect it. Because if it goes away, then, we'll just have kind of a plain vanilla thing, I mean, my mother's family's from Indonesia, so I'm the curry queen of the house. Curry goes into everything, and I think that New Orleans is the curry. You know, the Louisiana is the curry for the United States. It gives it that spice and that little something extra that we like to always talk about. So I think that's true. Yeah.
What do your guests think? What is their responses when you're doing tours? What are some of the comments and questions or things that stand out in your mind?
Well, the term I have become known for, I don't think this is a G-rated audience, so I can't really go into details. But it comes from the word, it comes from a British word that basically talks about the height of stupidity. And it starts off with dumb, and then it goes Fuckery. And so when I explain how the first people that came to build the city, where they came from, this term comes up a lot because it's more, excuse me, I mean, there's a list, you know, you've got the people from the convicts, and then you've got the smugglers, you've got the pirates, you know, and so I've put all this nefarious group into one group called the crew, and so this is partially why people enjoy the tour so much. Of course, I can't use that term when there are children there, but the idea is that I kind of make them all part of the convicts in the prison, and we're given the offer. I try to really bring them into the story. So I think that's what people enjoy the most, is that I make them the star of the story as much as possible. A lot of times they're so shell-shocked that they miss their cue.
Yeah.
I'll ask them a question, and they're kind of like, you know, deer caught in the headlights.
Yeah.
But I think that that's what people enjoy the most, is that I try to bring them into the story and make it relevant to them, because it's very difficult to imagine no electric lights on the streets, you know, no paved sidewalks, you know. All of this is kind of very strange. So by bringing them into the story, I think that's really what they enjoy the most. They have a lot of fun, you know. And I think the people that are shy, by the end of the tour, they're not so shy, you know. So I think they appreciate sharing the spotlight. I think that's it.
When you do your research for tours and just general New Orleans knowledge, how do you go about doing that?
I go into the old dusty rooms in the library.
And you emerge days later?
Yes, cobwebs and all. But I try to, do a lot of historical research, not necessarily about so much focused on the people, but it's just like to find out historically what was happening, so I can put it into context for them. We tend to talk about the Civil War over here, the Battle of New Orleans over there, but when you can add in like why chicory was added to the coffee and show that in context to the Battle of New Orleans or the Civil War, that kind of brings it home and makes it more relevant for them. So that's where I lean my research, trying to find out more about the other members of the family, like with Marie Delphine McCarty Lalaurie. The idea was there was a story about her uncle, and I wanted to find out more about the other members of her family to see how they contributed to the way she turned out. Of course, everyone that goes on that tour has seen the American Horror Story version. I have never seen it. So the people that have seen it have told me about Kathy Bates playing the lead role. And so when I give them the background about the woman and her beauty and her culture, I was like, well, Kathy Bates really was not the right choice.
Yeah.
Because it completely defeats the purpose. I think the reason that story is so famous is because she was so educated and beautiful and privileged. She really had no reason to be this twisted sister. And so you would look at her, everyone basically would like, you know, it was hard to believe that this woman was capable of doing this. But Kathy Bates, just the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
Because she looks like she will hurt you.
Right.
No offense, Kathy Bates, you're a wonderful actress. I love you, but that role, no. So I think that's what it is, that people find, you know, they just get pulled in. I throw in personal tidbits. I bring in all kinds of things just to keep the suspense going. And I think people enjoy that because they really, the one lady said, she said, I had no idea where the story was going. So I think that keep that intrigue going. You keep the people's attention more than if you just do a straight script story. I think that's it.
Have you ever been shocked by anything you found on your own research?
Yes.
Like
yes.
what?
I think when I started researching the Code Noir, I was completely blown away by the amount of time Marie Laveau dedicated to that. I mean, you don't hear that much about her involvement with it, but she was incredibly enmeshed in that system, as well as when they came up with the Tignon law. She was very vocal about it in a very, I don't know, not an intellectual way, but a very humane way. She really brought the issues to light and really rallied the people, the authorities, to bring that out in a way that prevented some of the things that have been associated with slavery in the past. So I think that was what really shocked me, that why isn't this more well known, how much she contributed to the general atmosphere of what was happening during that period of time. I think things could have been a lot worse if she had not been involved. Yeah.
I don't know how you grew up learning history and things like that, but I can say as I've become a grown-up and started learning my own history and the way that I want to learn it, it's become so much more fascinating than it ever was taught in school.
Yeah.
I always say if I would have had a chance to do a tour like this, any of the tours in any city, I probably would have turned out into some historian or something history-based, because the way the stories are told makes it so interesting, and it comes to life and you see things in real life.
Yeah.
And it's almost, there's times that you can feel the history there, and you feel like you can envision some of the things that are happening or have happened, things like that.
Yeah.
Do you ever have guests that come back and say, like, we have to go learn more about this? Or do you ever have repeat guests that come on tour?
I have. Actually have had a couple of people take the Bad Bitch tour, and then they took the Killers and Thrillers tour. Ghost of New Orleans tour, because it's family friendly. I think that has not been the same thing, I guess, because, families traveling with children, that's very difficult. But I've noticed that the more adult-centric tours, people will take them. One guest told me that they were coming back to take the, I'm so sorry, the Haunted Pub Crawl.
Okay.
They had done the Bad Bitches tour, and they had done the Killers and Thrillers, so they wanted to come back to do the Haunted Pub Crawl. I think that people, like you say, they have absolutely no idea how much the history influences the current day New Orleans. I think that has come out a lot. When they hear the story and then they look around the city now, they can actually relate to it, It's not like some places and events in history where things have changed so much that you really don't know what happened there. Here, you can almost sense what happened there, So the other thing that people tend to talk about a lot in the tours, of course, the question I get asked so much is about ghosts and spirits. And so the locations tend to bring that out a lot. We've had people on the tour with, I don't know the name of the app. There's an app that traces energy, especially at Lalaurie Mansion, and people want to go in. So those are the types of things that I've encountered. People want to know if they can actually go in some of the buildings, current history. But there's definitely a direct connection between the stories and what's happening today. I think that's a wonderful thing. It's very relevant.
Yeah. I went on a deep dive a couple of years ago of reading The Great Gatsby.
Okay.
And then reading another take on The Great Gatsby because it had been 100 years since the original copyright and expired.
Yes.
So it was a rewrite written from the female perspective.
Oh.
Which was very interesting.
Yeah.
And then continued on this reading journey to a prelude of the story written from the main, like Nick, his point of view. Yeah. And it was all in New Orleans. And the imagery in that book brought to life, it was like there was a fire in a brothel. And it was the description of the fire and how it was spread from room to room and nobody knew what was going on. It was chaos and things burned down and everyone just kept rebuilding. And it was just that, like, how it kind of took life in the early 1900s and made it seem much more real. That the next time I went down to the city, I was like, oh, this is like Rampart. Like, this is exactly where the story took place. So that just made it come so much more alive. Yeah. And that was just in some fun reading I had as a grown-up. It was like 2 months of solid reading on Great Gatsby. But it just made things so much more alive, and it, like, you could almost feel what it was like in the early 1900s with all that.
Well, I'm a pretty tough cookie, but I don't think I could have made it in the 1800s.
Yeah.
The more I research it, the more I admire the people that founded this city, because it took a tremendous amount of fortitude to stay here through the yellow fever and the fires, the hurricanes. A tremendous amount of courage, men and women. I think I cannot tip my hat enough to them, because if they hadn't had that, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
It would have been a lot easier for them to give up. I mean, look at the flood of 22, when the government sponsored the migration up the Mississippi. I mean, there were so many times where people could have just thrown up their hands and given up, and they didn't.
Yeah.
So just for that reason alone, you know, even though I'm have roots here via my great grandfather still, even though I wasn't born here, I feel very connected and very, you know, honored to be here, because I don't know, I mean, how many places really have this much history behind it because of the time it was founded, what was going on worldwide. I mean, we have our ups and downs. We've got problems like any place else. But I think what I get from people is that when they leave the tour, their feeling is that it is a remarkable place to visit, but it is also a wonderful place to live.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I remember when we were looking at moving here, we came for a weekend. We already had a weekend planned and came to look at some houses. And I remember driving home and I was like, I don't want to go home. Like, this feels like home here. Yeah. And the people are welcoming. It's like the city pulls you in and you can't leave. Yeah. And then we always talk about, like, oh, should we move? We're like, nope, like, we're happy here.
It's after you live here for a while, it's kind of hard to imagine living. I mean, I could live in Chicago because of the parallels there. The culture is very similar. Of course, it's under common law, but still the atmosphere is very much like New Orleans. It's very warm, very friendly. Even the food, you see the reflection of New Orleans in the food. A lot of Louisianans in Chicago.
The jazz.
Oh, yeah. The jazz is there.
Yep.
Definitely. I think I haven't been to every city along the Mississippi, but I would have to say, because Jean Baptiste was from Haiti, so that's that connection with New Orleans as well. I think that's part of my pride for the city. It's one of the few cities that was founded by someone from my culture. But you can definitely, there's a block on Esplanade that looks like it was just transplanted to Chicago. I mean, literally, I drove down the street and I was like, you know, it looks almost, the architecture, everything, exactly like the street in Chicago. So I think that, too, that brings it home, you know?
How did you get into your belief of, or do you have a belief of ghosts and spirits and all of the supernatural?
Well, I was one of those special children. Yes, yes. I was one of those special children. Well, my father's side of the family, and my mother's side of the family, they both come from monarchies. And so they're very traditional, family oriented. But on both sides, there was a very deep understanding that the spiritual world and the physical world are very closely related. And so growing up, I don't know if many people realize this, but I think we kind of get disconnected from being a child. But when you're a child, you think everyone's like you. And so I thought everybody, could see, Uncle Joe. And I came to find out, no.
Nobody else is.
No. Yes, and so I think that was, I learned at an early age that, this was the kind of thing. I grew up in the 60s. And so this was not as welcomed a conversation as it is now. I grew up kind of reading about all this metaphysical stuff. My dad was a biochemist, and so I was kind of like in the lab with them. But even he was explaining to me about the part of science that's involved in what we call the metaphysical or paranormal. So he was the one that explained to me about the electromagnetic field around the body and how once you lose your physical garment, that electromagnetic energy is still there. And so this is what all the Ghostbusters are picking up. And so once I got that correlation, I was kind of like, I was like, oh, so there's Uncle Joe again.
Right.
So I wasn't so afraid of it because if it's something that I have and they have the same thing, that made that connection. But being one of those special children was not easy because we get disconnected from it. Children, I always encourage parents when they take the children on the Ghosts of New Orleans tour. We know that children have very vivid imaginations, but just take time to listen through, and ask them questions, because if you ask a child enough questions, if they're really making it up, by the third or fourth question, they're making it up. But if they stay true to their story all the way through, believe them.
Right.
I think that would have helped me a great deal if people had just not said, oh, that's that you're just making that up.
Yeah. Right.
I think that would have helped me because quite honestly, for a while there, I was a little bit worried. I was like, am I the only one seeing this stuff? But then, I got over it and I started looking at it scientifically, and that helped me a great deal.
This morning we were talking about all the events of this weekend with the moon and the weather and like everything going on crazy. I'm like, well, I mean, it sure all makes sense. There's got to be some connection to everything.
Well, we know scientifically, we know that the moon does have an impact on our physical body. Our blood is the tide of our body. So yes, the moon does have an impact on us from a physical point of view. Now, emotionally, yes. Okay. It also has some bearing. I don't like to make things sound strange, because I think that's the problem. If you look at it normally, like scientifically, then that takes the woo-woo out of it.
Right.
I think people, they're more open to understanding how these things relate to them now.
Yeah.
So yes, the moon does play a huge role. I don't know from an astrology point of view how much of it actually makes sense to people. But from just thinking about the moon, you can definitely draw a correlation between the tides of our body and the tides of the oceans. And I think if you just leave it there, then you help people to become more comfortable with it and not feel fearful. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
You don't want people freaking out. People ask me about ghosts on the tour, and I tell them, if you see anything that you don't immediately recognize, just walk the other way. Don't do the scream 3 freak out because you'll end up hurting yourself. So I think giving people some logical point of reference helps. Because quite honestly, the first time I saw it, I didn't really know what I was seeing, but I knew I was seeing something. And I just stayed calm. But I credit my parents for that because they were scientists, but they were also very earthy people. They were very much into both sides of the coin. Helping people to deal with science, but also realizing that nature is the master scientist. So I think I give them credit for that.
Do you have a favorite haunted location somewhere else you've been besides New Orleans, or somewhere that you would like to go to?
Well, my favorite place is very far from here, but it's a very spiritual place. The vibe is very unique in Bali, Indonesia. I try to tell everyone, if you don't have Bali, Indonesia on your bucket list, put it there now. Bali, that's the home place of my mother's ancestors. I went there and just the same way you didn't want to leave, that's how I felt. I just felt so grounded there. It's not necessarily haunted, like in the sense that we talk about spirits that are kind of chained to the place from history or from being abused or enjoying life so much. Okay, but it's a very spiritual place. It's one of the temples that's on one of the islands, and it sits in the middle of a lake. And I think you definitely, my mother's people are the descendants of the Aga people, AGA people. And when I went to their island, I had no clue. My mother's generation wanted to be American. So I had no clue about my family history that much until I became a teenager. So I was drawing these pictures, and my mother was like, "Where did you see that?" And I was like, "I didn't see it anywhere. I just drew it." And come to find out, I had drawn they have guardians of the villages, and I had drawn the faces of these guardians. I had never been there before. So then when I went, they said they were expecting me, and I had no idea about that either. But when they took me to this temple, I definitely felt like, whoa,
Yeah.
So I think haunting, people kind of get frightened. But there are some places in New Orleans, you will feel the same thing. You don't feel afraid. You just feel this presence of people that have lived there. It's not really scary. That's how I felt there. I think the most that I felt that is in Jackson Square.
Okay.
St. Louis Cathedral, there's Pierre Daubourget was very famous there. And I've definitely felt his presence there. And it was that same feeling I felt in the temple in Bali, like that
it's not
presence.
an eerie. It's more that there's someone else here.
Yeah,
And
it's like you feel someone behind you, that kind of, you don't feel frightened, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like someone's behind me, I need to jump and look who's behind me or go in a panic. It's more of the like, oh, yep, someone else is. Like you expect someone else to be there.
Yeah, and I think St. Louis Cathedral is the place for me. I've never been in Lalaurie Mansion, but for me, it's when I went into St. Louis Cathedral, I got that exact same feeling I got in Bali. Like you could feel the presence of the people that had been there. I don't know if it was Père Daubourget, okay, but I definitely felt it was definitely masculine. The presence was very, warm, a warm feeling, but very masculine. I wasn't getting a feminine energy at all. But very calm. Of course, the priesthood was different then.
Yeah.
I think the monks had a lot in common with the priests of that time. But that's definitely the feeling that I got. But I would definitely say that the temple in Bali, that probably is my favorite place because it's a very feminine energy there. Here it's much, much much more testosterone, much more male energy. And I guess, it makes sense because women, their role was very behind the scenes. So that makes sense. But yeah, St. Louis Cathedral for me that's the place I felt the most, and Jackson Square. But yeah, that temple in Bali, that was very interesting. Very interesting.
Go on a field trip there with you.
You have to go, really.
Yeah.
Because it's like New Orleans. It's like there's no other place like that. So yeah, those are my two favorite places.
Yeah. Where would you like to take your own knowledge and like ability to kind of craft your craft, I guess it would be even more?
I one of the things I would really like to do is I would like to meet the people in the View Care Commission. I'd like to talk to them and find out like what they had to go through in the process of making the French Quarter and the other historic districts, particularly the French Quarter, since that was the first. I would like to talk to them and the people who the Preservation Society, Those are the two groups I would love to talk to because they have documented so much. I think I would like to, I was so sorry I couldn't make it yesterday. University of New Orleans had an 18th century history presentation, and my work, I couldn't get out of it to go. But I would like to talk to the people that are writing the history, to find out, like, what did you feel when you find this out? Right. The same way you're asking me these questions, I would like to ask them because they've written the history. And I think that that's such a cool job.
Yeah.
Really, I think that's so cool. I love history. I really do.
Yeah, I do too. I always say that I don't know everything, but I have a lot of interest in a lot of things. And if you start telling me about something, I'm like, I'm going to go look that up. And then it's then like I want to keep talking about it because I'm like, oh, I found this out and let me tell you all about it. And then all of a sudden the person you're talking to, they have something to contribute. And then you're an hour into a conversation. Right. You're like, okay.
Well, we tend to look at the buildings, right? And then sometimes we just forget people built those buildings.
Right.
So those are the stories I'm interested in. What made them build it that way? Why they choose this location? Right. Stuff like that. So you're right. It just pulls you in. I think if people really had the backstory of the people more, what was motivating them in relationship to world events, like there's a lot of things going on now that world events that really aren't being talked about, so people are not really understanding.
Right.
So I think for us in this business, the more you know about the backstory, the better.
Yes. I know you said that 18th century must have been a very difficult time. Yeah. And you admire those people. Would you want to be able to go back now and kind of have the hindsight of, or I guess maybe the foresight of it and being able to go live in that time period?
Well, yes, I would, because on my father's side, about 5 generations back now, we had a pirate in our family. And he was a bad boy. He was a nice guy. But Jean Lafitte is the person. If I could live at any point in time, I would have liked to have lived during that point in time because of the fact that he was so charming. He had a code of honor. Yes, we know he was a scallywag. We know. But he had a code of honor. So if I could choose any point in New Orleans history to live, that's where I would have liked to have been. Not the 1699 era, not the 1830s, but that 1745 to 1795. I would have loved to have lived here. Although I think I would have preferred to have been a man. Because I don't think I could have been in the mix. There were some female pirates, but they came later.
Yeah.
But I would have had to have been a man. But that's the period of time I would have loved to have lived in, because that's a very unique combination. To have someone that has a license to loot.
Right.
And I'm writing a book about this. Okay. So having that license to loot, but also having a code of honor. I think that's so cool. Personally, I just think it's a cool combination. So that's where I would have liked to have been.
He's kind of like the informant.
Yeah.
Or I guess you would be like the agent who's also a former criminal kind of thing.
Well, the big three, they did themselves in. When they revoked the letter of marque, that's what turned everything around. I think before that, everybody was pretty cool with what the situation was.
Right, you're right.
You know, but when, here you are on the sea and then you get to port and you're under the threat of being beheaded.
Right.
Because they decided that they didn't need you anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of offensive, don't you think?
Oh,
a bit
absolutely.
rude.
Yeah.
It's a bit rude.
It's changed. It's like moving the goalpost.
Well, I'm not going to touch that one. Okay. But yeah, I think that's 1745. I'm sorry. They came here 100 years before. So 1699 is the official date. But we know the French were here 100 years before. So I think 1745 to 1795, that is just like when everything was just like really interesting. After 1795, I think, once you get closer to the Louisiana Purchase and the American influence, some of the scallywag thing kind of drops off. Things start getting a little bit more organized. So when it's a total chaos and disarray, I think that was the most interesting period of time for me. That's where I would have liked to have been. But because, I grew up with swords and stuff, yeah, that's definitely my period of time because I think that that's the honorable way to have a fight. 50-50. We both have a 50-50 chance. Why do you think there were so few murders during that period of time? Because it's like, oh, let's talk about this.
Yes.
Rather, because, here you have a sword, I have a sword, 50-50 chance. Yes, we're going to negotiate this, aren't we?
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's what made it so interesting. There was much more an honorable way of settling disputes and living. You had to be much more self-reliant. You had to be much more accountable. So I think we're missing that now. And I think we need to bring some of that back. You ask a person about being honorable now, they don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's not a good thing.
Yeah. What do you wish guests knew before they came on tour?
That the state is under French law. I think that's the biggest thing. People are just in culture shock because they're seeing things that they don't see at home. And they're like, if this was happening at home, the police would be all over this. Where are the police? And it kind of it sends the wrong signal. If they knew what that meant, that the French law is about family first and personal liberty, then they wouldn't feel so shell-shocked. But if they don't know what that really means, okay, you're under French law, so what?
Right.
So you have to actually break it down to them and tell them, well, because French law is about family first, personal liberty, this is why you see the things you see here. I think that would make their time, they would waste less time being stunned and they could enjoy the city more. Of course, I do tell them that they can't do what they do in the French Quarter anywhere else because that's the other thing. That's the other problem. People think, well, we can do this here. We can do this. No, you can't do that anywhere.
Yeah.
So those are the two big things.
I think when I talk about New Orleans and things we do here with my family in the Midwest, they're like, wait, what? And the biggest thing for them is just the whole thought of Mardi Gras, that they think Mardi Gras is just some big drunken party. And I was like, actually, we take the kids to the parades and a lot of them are family friendly and they're aimed for the kids and there's stuff for kids. And they're like, in New Orleans? And it's just a shock to them that I think what is shown in maybe just normal travel things is just the party side of it and the fun side, but the history side and the family part of it that, there definitely is that darker side and more adult side of things, but the family side of it.
Every city has a dark side.
Absolutely.
Every city, they just keep it under wraps.
Right. And we tend to embrace it a couple times a year a little bit more. So it's just that it makes it interesting that, like you tell them like, oh, actually we're taking the kids to do this. And they're like, wait, what?
Well, there's also surprise that it's a season.
Right.
When I tell them, no, it's not just Mardi Gras
a day.
It's a season. Like football season. They're like, what?
Yeah.
And they're like, when does it start? January 6th. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
that's also a big
Yeah.
surprise. Yeah.
There was a couple of years ago that I had never been so happy for Ash Wednesday. It was
I
a
know.
long, hard Mardi Gras season.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
busy, we packed it all in, and I was like, I'm never more happy than I am today. It's Ash Wednesday.
Yeah, by the time we get to Ash Wednesday, everyone's just completely ready for quiet. Yes.
Right.
Quiet.
Yeah, that like you kind of welcome the next few weeks of
Yes.
I guess like introspective time.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
It is. It is. What is your favorite season in New Orleans? Do you have a favorite time that you love to be out?
Spring.
Spring.
Definitely spring.
Mm-hmm.
I'm partial to spring. I'm a May baby. Mm-hmm. So spring is always my favorite, and then fall.
Okay.
But in New Orleans, I think spring stays pretty true. Mm-hmm. Unlike fall, you know, autumn. Mm-hmm. Autumn is kind of like iffy, but we definitely have a spring. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's really cool. You know, the jasmine's blooming and the flowers are coming out. So for me, that's the real season here. So I'm holding on because, you know, we don't, well, of course, this year we did have our blizzard. So I had to keep it very quiet, but I was so tickled. I was just loving how people just skating on Canal Street. This is a once in a generation thing, okay?
Right.
So I was just pleased that people got a chance to enjoy what we grew up with.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
I mean, we woke up and looked out the window and we're like, okay, all right. So,
Exactly.
and I mean, my friends were looking up on YouTube, how do I build a snowman?
Yes.
And
Yes.
like, I never even thought about that you've never experienced
Yes.
how to even build a snowball to make a snowman.
And the children,
Yeah.
they were like, you know, you could just see they were like completely like, what is this? But I love the way they embraced it. I really did. I thought that was the best thing. For me, I remember growing up with 12 inches of snow. Okay, you can relate.
Same.
And I was glad it wasn't 12 inches, but I was glad
Yeah.
that people who have never experienced that, it's not all bad.
Right.
You know, there are some good things you can do: the sledding, the skiing, the snowboarding. You know, the fact that they could say that they did that in New Orleans, that's just like, wow, you know?
Yeah. It was
so
funny
cool.
that I have felt more comfortable with a hurricane coming through than the snowfall. Cause I was like, well, what do we do with like, it was like, I kind of really lost the Midwest in me.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
I was like, wait a minute. Like, I don't know how to prep for this here. Cause a hurricane, you know exactly what to expect.
Exactly.
You plan your 3 to 4 days, or you leave and you come back or whatever, and you just know what to do with this. I was like, well, is it going to melt? How long will it take to melt? And then like if the power goes out and
I know, but I think it was a nice experience.
It was.
But I agree with you. I'm the exact opposite. When hurricanes come, I'm just like, I'm so, you know, like I get anxious because there's so many variables.
Right. Yeah.
You know, but I'm getting better now.
I think there's more to pull from for the hurricanes. You know, like, oh, this hurricane was like this, so you're going to plan accordingly to do this and this and this. Versus the snowfall, this is such a historical event that you didn't know what to expect.
I was glad that they were prepared. I'm
Yeah,
glad.
yeah.
You know, in 2019, I don't know what year you moved here, but in 2019, we got like, I'm going to be generous and say 1.5 inches. And they knew it was coming, but they didn't prepare for it. And then once it came, it didn't last,
Right.
but they shut the city down and they caused, it was so much chaos. This time, I'm just so proud of the Department of Transportation. They actually had sand, they had salt, they were prepared. I was like, give those guys medals because it could have been much worse.
Oh, sure.
If they had done what they did in 2019 and left the city open, can you imagine? So they really did a good job this time. We got through it. We had fun with it, as opposed to in 2019, it was really bad.
Yeah.
It was really bad. So this time, I think there's more joy stories than horror stories.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
So, well, I thank you so much for joining us
More than
today. I
welcome.
have loved hearing about your side of
My
things
pleasure.
in New Orleans and just getting to talk about the city and all of the great things that we have to offer down here, and that is such an overlooked kind of like gem of a
Yes.
contribution to our country, and there's so much that has been really shaped in historical context here. So
I'm hoping we can turn that around in the next few years. I think the improvements to the city, the companies that are coming into the city, the young people that are staying, that's going to make a big difference. Thank you for having me. I appreciate being able to share a little bit with you about the tour experience. So thank you for having me.
yes, thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Hometown Hauntings, and make sure you check us out across all of our social media pages.
Hometown Hauntings is brought to you by Ghost City Tours, the largest ghost tour company in the nation. With tours in over 20 cities, including New Orleans, Savannah, Charleston, and beyond, we bring haunted history to life with spine-tingling tales and expert storytelling. Ready to experience the paranormal up close? Book now at GhostCityTours.com to explore a haunted city near you.